Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. We are very, very fortunate to have with us my current nemesis, Madison Cawthorn, newly elected congressman from North Carolina. Thank you for taking the time. I know you've been very busy in Washington, and we're going to talk a little bit about mental health and fitness and all those other kind of things that I think you're in a position to speak on. How are you doing today?
Well, I'd be better if you didn't, call me out and say that I can't do squats and I skip leg day. But anyways, we can look past that. I mean, I'm happy to beat you in that arm wrestling competition where we can all get back together.
Let me tell you, I can barely do squats myself.
Okay.
My squat is like 185, which is absolutely pathetic.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, it's way more than me. And also, it was just really cool to hear my name mentioned on the Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, I was just actually listening to you talk. I was like, wow, I love this guy. He's so funny. Then all of a sudden he's like, also Madison Cawthorn is pathetic. And I was like, oh, well.
I didn't say that. I just implied it. So let's get into this because people got all heated and I was very, very surprised that they got heated. Can you explain to people what the expression skipping leg day means?
Yeah. So it mainly is guys who work out their upper body. They do, chest. They do basically they'll do their chest with bench press. They'll do curls all the time. And, they're just focused on the glory muscles. They're not actually strong. And so when you call me out on that, I saw everybody just lose their minds about it. And, obviously when I heard, my wife is saying, oh, well, I can squat more than he can because she's a big CrossFit star. And then I was like, no, honey, the big problem in this world today is that people can't take a joke.
Yeah.
And that's why, we're starting to see some of our First Amendment protections and kind of culturally our First Amendment kind of going away. There's no freedom of expression.
Yeah, I never even thought for a second that you would take it seriously. And a lot of people started freaking out and screaming, the same kind of people who are against cancel culture. My funniest one was when people are yelling at me because I was taking a cheap shot at a veteran who lost his ability to walk in overseas. Apparently you're in Vietnam, like Senator Blumenthal.
I actually served in both World War II and Vietnam. I just have a great skincare routine. Being 25 years old and being in a wheelchair, most people just instantly associate that with the military. So, people come up all the time and say, hey, man, thank you for your service. And then I got to kind of recount that and be like, oh, I actually never got to serve. They won't let me fight in a wheelchair, although I'm very deadly downhill.
One of the things I think it's important to talk about, especially nowadays where people are dealing with mental health issues, whenever someone goes through a traumatic experience, which you obviously have, there's two things that goes through their mind. One is, okay, what does this mean? But also the sense of panic and loss of control. And once they've heard someone else go through it, it's a lot easier. Like the first time you break up with a girl, right? You think, oh my God, no one understands how I feel. Everybody understands, but you just think you're the first person. But when something as rare as losing the ability to walk, that is something that's going to be obviously much more profoundly disturbing. Can you talk us through the day of that accident?
Yeah, so it was on my spring break. I was a senior in high school at a full ROTC scholarship to NC State. I had some conflicting news at the Naval Academy. I was having my congressman sort that out for me, and so I knew I was going to the military. Just didn't know which school I was going to at the time. My best friend and I we went on a ride, and we knew that hey, once we go to college, we're pretty much going to go separate ways, and we probably won't ever get to be together like this again. So let's go down to Florida. So we went down, had an awesome time, but as much fun as two Christian guys can have in Florida. And then when we were driving back, we stopped for a big lunch, then walked back into the same restaurant, ordered the exact same meal again because we were still hungry. The wait staff thought they were living through just a repeat of the day. And then we get in the car and we're driving, big meal, sunshine, middle of the afternoon. I'm like, hey, I'm going to take a nap right quick. I'll take over, in 10 minutes. He's like, yeah, absolutely. So lay my seat back. And then, I everything now was recounted to me from other people because I don't have any memories of this particular instance. Just a few little flashbacks. But then my buddy fell asleep at the wheel. We're probably going 3-4 miles an hour over. We ran right headlong into a concrete barricade. And then, I had no idea that was, stepping in that car would be the last step I ever took. And then I just remember, I've got a brief memory of, one of the doctors holding my hand as we're, rolling into the ICU. And then, I spent several months in ICU down in Florida. And then I spent, a little over 9 months after that in Atlanta at a rehab facility, just learning how to live in a wheelchair. And man, when I pulled up, there's literally a statue of a guy in a wheelchair, trying to throw a spear or something. And I said, whoa, why am I here? Like, this is for people who are going to be in wheelchairs. Like, I'll be good. Like, in just a little while, why nothing bad can ever happen to me. But then, I started going through a very difficult time. Once I realized that I wasn't going to heal just naturally all the way, I got in a really dark place, and I was let out of the rehab facility.
Well, let's slow down, because I think this is such a process that I really want to kind of spell it out for people, because this is the kind of thing where every day is a new challenge, especially having to relearn everything. Your friend, was he okay?
Yeah, I mean, he was just I think maybe a minor concussion, something wrong with his hand, but he survived.
Do you still talk to him?
Yeah, he's about to be in my wedding.
Does he have, how did he handle that guilt? Because that's a big one.
Man, I gotta say, Brad's got his mental demons. I have nothing but respect for him. He's starting a Vitabev company. He's going really well. Tequila in a little can. It's great. But you know what? He definitely has a mental demon. So he moved out to California, I think in part to get away just from the constant reminders of me. And, we're still real close. We obviously had a big falling out, and, there's just some conflicting issues of what actually happened at the accident. And so who knows? I don't have the answers to those questions. But
is this the kind of thing where, I'm sure at different points when you're laying in bed, you got a lot of spare time, the brain starts going overtime. Were you kicking yourself? Why did I take that nap? Why did we do this? Going over and trying to do the time machine thing?
Oh man, it was just nonstop. The biggest problem was I don't have any of the memories. And so, I'll ask somebody and they'll share a little snippet of information that it was completely meaningless to them, but then it'll shed new light on me. Like, wow, maybe I was taking a nap because my shoes were tied too tight, or who knows but you play it over and over and over and over in your head. And that leads you to a dark place. It really does.
What I would be worried about is seeing the look on my parents' face when they see their baby boy in the bed, fit, he's about to join the military, and now, he's not in the best of shape, to put it mildly. Were you worried about that? What was the look like on mom's face?
So, what, my family did a great job of, my brother dropped everything, him and my dad were from the same company, and Edward Jones was really kind to them, say, hey, you guys take the time that you need. One of the best companies in the world to work for. So my dad and my brother came down, mom was there. But that was throughout a lot of the time in the ICU where I don't have my memories from. So I don't remember those initial faces, but I'll tell you what really stuck with me is because I was about 210, 215 pounds when the accident occurred. When I got to the rehab facility in Atlanta, I had lost 85 pounds.
Oh my God.
In just a couple of months.
How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", 6'2".
So 6'2", 135?
Yeah, I think it was 140s.
That's insane.
And so then I rolled from there in front of a mirror. I had not seen myself this entire time. And I mean, my face was sunken in. It looked like a skull. And that's when that was the first time I really broke down. I was like, wow, this is way more serious than I thought.
There's actually a little bit of history here that you're probably not privy to. Ronald Reagan, he had his first autobiography, which was published in 1966, was called Where's the Rest of Me? Because he played in a movie, and in the movie, it's a veteran who loses his legs, and they did the makeup so well, he pulls back the cover and they weren't there, and he screams out, genuinely disturbed, where's the rest of me? And that was the title of his first autobiography. So you have something in common with the Gipper there, because just seeing yourself, what you look like, and who's that person is in the mirror is not your mental image of yourself, and that's got to be almost demonic. It's like in a movie.
It was demonic. And you know what? It wasn't really until I had this recreational therapist come in, who does the sports therapies and everything, whether it's racing on a track or if it's wheelchair basketball, getting a kayak. And he came in, and man, this guy just told it like it was. And I was like, yeah, no, I really like hunting. I like running. I like all these things. He's like, okay, so every single one of those things you're not going to be able to do. And we're going to have to walk you through how you do those. And I mean, he just laid it out harshly. And it was at that point I realized that, well, I'm probably not going to walk again. And man, I went downhill very hard.
Well, what did that entail? How did you, I mean, the thing is, you're not being depressed for no reason. You know, it's not a breakup. It's not, I got fired. This is my life from now on. And I'm sure there's a part of you, because you're a fighter, who thinks I'm going to be that guy who all the doctors said you're never going to walk again. And I'm going to show them, you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't met someone like me. So how does that voice get knocked out of your head?
So that voice did not get knocked out of my head until, okay. I mean, it still kind of speaks a little bit until I was out of the hospital. I had been in North Carolina, my home. I was living with my parents for several months, and I was bed bound a lot. You know, I could probably only sit up about 3 or 4 hours at a time.
Wow.
And then my dad came into the room, and he gave some pretty harsh advice. It was basically, you know, just to summarize, it was basically, man, either decide to live your life in spite of your wheelchair and say move forward, or man, don't do it, because this is. And he was crying his eyes out at the time, and he's like, because you're not living a life that's worth living. And then he left, and I mean, you know, I had the means to do to end it, or I had the means to get up in my wheelchair and go out and eat dinner. And I stayed in there for a solid amount of time. I actually made a T-graph of pros and cons of being alive. And, you know, eventually being alive won out. I got in my wheelchair, went out. And then that's when I defeated that voice. Said, you know what? I'm not going to be the guy who defeats all these doctors' ideas. I'm going to be the guy who can go inspire people like me.
If you went back in time and sat down to yourself at that moment, because there's going to be people who hear this, or people who have a friend who hears this. I mean, this really is an opportunity to kind of speak to them. What would you tell that kid, you know, who's making that decision? Because these are two bad choices. It's not like you have like, do I want to be extremely rich or do I want to be extremely famous? It's like, this is going to suck or this is going to suck. Those are the worst choices to make.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's no easy decision here. And I think that this is one thing that has to be completely voluntary, because if you do it based on somebody else's word, you're not going to make it, and you're just going to be more and more depressed. And so my advice for them would be, just realize that regardless of your physical stature, you can make a difference because we live in a great country with the Americans with Disability Act. But the thing that won out the little T-graph for me is I still have the ability to make a difference. And yeah, I'm pretty daggum religious. And so, you know, I'm like, well, God put me here. I didn't die. So I might as well, I probably still have a mission to do.
When you see other people who are paraplegics, like when you're campaigning or just when you're out and about, do you guys have this kind of camaraderie? Like you spot each other and you're like, this guy knows what I'm going through, and there's this kind of bond?
Yeah, so I found the differences in, you know, the disabled community is so diverse, and you can't really put people in a box on this, but I have found that people who are normally born with a disability, they normally don't react extraordinarily well to, you know, saying, oh, hey man, yeah, we're both in wheelchairs, like, what's up? And, you know, they're normally like, that's not my identity, and they kind of roll off. But people, I think, who kind of gotten to live their life, you know, 7, 10, 20 years like me, they realize, hey man, you know, this is a common bond that we both have. And so, you know, I always roll up to them, kind of elbow and be like, hey man, we're going to have to race later, and everybody will laugh. But the biggest thing I like to do, especially for guys that are younger, you know, significantly younger, 10 years or so, I will pray for them. And I will literally grab them and say, hey, you are destined to do great things. Everywhere your wheel rolls is your territory, and make the best difference you can.
Yeah, it's easy for me to say this as someone who's not a paraplegic, to think that like just because someone's sitting down doesn't mean that they can't accomplish great things. But at the same time, when you lose so many things that you took for granted, it's hard to have that perspective. I'm sure you know there's all sorts of things where you're like, you know, you have a list of like all your dreams, cross this off, cross this off, cross this off, cross this off, and that's, you know, got to be disheartening. And it's the truth. This isn't some emotional depression. These are real things that, like, what are some of the things that you like miss the most?
You know what? Just going to the bathroom. I mean, there is so much that goes into me being able to use the bathroom. I'm not going to go into all the details.
Of course.
But man, it is that's something that's a constant reminder every single day. And also when I wake up, I normally don't remember I'm in a wheelchair. And so I will normally, when I wake up, go to roll over and my leg doesn't move. And then I kind of have to relive that whole experience for, 10, 15 seconds. Like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And so it's really tough. But the most difficult things is, you need help with a lot of shit. I mean, I've got, if there's a small ledge, I got to have my buddies who can lift me up on it. If my mom's carrying a big tray with sweet tea and biscuits because we're in the South and it's heavy, I can't hop up and go grab it because I'll probably drop it off my lap. So it's a life of like probably 10,000 inconveniences a day.
I have a friend who's very tall, and he's very sick of hearing, how tall are you? Were your parents tall? Do you play basketball? When did you become 6 foot, right? So I'm sure when people meet you, they don't know how to react, and they're going to do some things they're trying their best, but they don't know what to do. Can you give people advice? Like if you meet someone who's in a wheelchair, how should you approach them respectfully without making it awkward?
So if you see someone really, visibly struggling to get up a hill, I don't mind if someone comes and says, hey, can I give you a hand? Because I might be about to flip over. And that's just obviously dangerous. But normally I don't offer help unless they're kind of looking for it. I mean, hold the door open for them. Absolutely. But the biggest thing to help these people is, if you're going through a crowd, maybe reach forward and tap the guy ahead of you, just to make sure that he makes a little hole. And then probably the biggest thing that I found that fixed this for me, because people always come up and, you're in a wheelchair. They don't know how to act around that. They don't, they say, oh yeah, well, let's walk over here. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say walk. And, it's awkward. So the thing that I found, and this is directed at people, in my position, make fun of the injury first. Like just make a quick joke about it. Yeah. And people, and then it disarms the whole situation. They're like, oh wait, this guy is not sensitive about it. And so and honestly, my brother and I getting a joke about me being in a wheelchair is the thing that fixed me the most. I'm telling you, my brother, just making jabs. Like what you said, this guy skips leg day.
Yeah.
Everybody was pissed off about it. My brother was like, yeah, that's what got Madison had depression. He's not upset about it.
There's an organization which I think you should be aware of called Irreverent Warriors. And what they do, it's ex-military people who help each other dealing with PTSD and suicidal ideation by using dark humor and memes. Because as bad as it is being, paraplegic, having those PTSD, you can't escape that. You know what I mean? You could still have a fun time with your buddies, but when those demons come in, those guys have it really, really rough. And they're also so very tough, and, they don't want to show weakness. So they hang out with each other, and they, use this kind of dark humor to be like, bro, I get where you're coming from. I have it too, but like, let's not, when you're dealing with these kind of dark thoughts, when you give them validity, it kind of feeds on itself and makes it much worse. Whereas when you have a brother, like you're very fortunate to do, who could snap you out of it, you don't end up feeling sorry for yourself. Like, this sucks, but this is my situation, and I'm going to do great things with this situation. Absolutely. And, a big thing I also noticed is you got to build kind of a framework, almost small little barriers in your head. You've got to allow yourself to grieve, or else, this is the reason I think we see such high levels of suicide in ex-military, because, like you said, these guys, they're tough. They don't want to show the emotion. And then, all of a sudden it creeps in. They've never told anybody about it. Hits them like 10,000 bricks at one time. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I found is if I catch, you really got to set barriers for yourself to say, if I'm spiraling, like if I think I'm a glider and I'm going down, and it's like, wow, this thought is literally it's circular reasoning. It's like, oh, if God can do anything, can he create a rock big enough you can't pick up? Yeah. It's like, okay, we're not going to accomplish anything here. You're going to wake up in a wheelchair and you're going to have to get over it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. But, I gotta say, Michael, I appreciate you being willing to do a podcast with me. I know you and I are opposite ends of a lot of spectrums, but man, I think that the biggest problem we have going on in our country, I'm not talking about politics, I'm just talking about socially, is that people are unwilling to have a conversation that goes past talking points. And so I think, that's one big reason why I like smoking cigars. I can invite someone I don't really agree with to smoke a cigar with me. It means he's going to have to commit 30 seconds to that conversation. And then you're at least going to understand where they're coming from. Be like, oh, well, yeah, I understand. Like, there's a guy named Peter Meyer. He's a congressman here. He voted for impeachment. But he gave me his reasons. And I was like, hey, you told me why. And now I understand where you're coming from. And I think so I appreciate this, man. Well, where this comes from in part is I had a friend named Matt. I spoke about him in a previous episode of Rogan, and he had been sexually abused as a kid, and he was scared to tell everybody, and he was scared to tell me. And I told him the truth. I go, I don't care. Like, I don't think of you as a different person. You're the same guys you were 5 minutes ago. This sucks. No one should have to deal with this. If I had a magic wand, I would change this. And then I went on Rogan to talk about it because it's really wrong that people who have been victimized like this as children do not feel comfortable talking about this as adults, and they have to hold this secret and think they're the only one. And then it's like, I don't want that pain that he had to be taking over his identity, and also to just have to be bottled in. These are awkward conversations, but if the awkward conversations don't happen, the person who is the victim is the one who's suffering the burden. And I think that's extremely disturbing. And what was even worse, after I talked about it on Rogan, like 4 more of my friends came forward and told me, like, privately. But again, like you're saying, if more people talk about these issues, they're not stigmatized. You're not going to have to feel like a weirdo because you're sitting down. Like, people know how to talk to you, how to approach you. And God forbid, if someone else gets an accent, they'll be like, okay, I know what I can look forward to. It's going to suck, but I'm not. There's some comedian, I wish I knew his name, who said, if it has a name, you're not the first person who has to deal with it. So,
wow, well said.
Yeah. So can you tell me what are some of the little things that you had to relearn?
Oh man, so I'm going to show you my hands. Not really sure if it will come out on this, but if you can see the muscle difference right here on my thumb versus this.
Oh yeah.
So my hand was, and there's a lot of differing opinions of why this happened. Leading opinion is, when I was kind of braced down, I was just pulling so hard that I damaged some nerves. So the bottom half of my arm and most of my hand were paralyzed for a while. Okay. Still don't have all feeling there. But we're having to relearn just how to, I still can't touch this pinky with my thumb.
Okay.
But, having to relearn how to touch all these fingers. Yeah, that's something that's so simple, but you realize, you should see my freaking signature now, man. My freaking handwriting is just abysmal. And it's I have to sit there and be like, wow, this is literally the best I can do just because my dexterity is so messed up now. And, but big things I had to relearn how to do. It changes everything because I had to learn how to redecorate my room or kind of my house, because there's things that look good when you're 6 feet in the air that look a lot worse when you're 4 feet down, because it's like, oh, I can't actually see that. Why would I put that there? And then, big thing is having to learn how to pre-plan, because you can do almost anything in a wheelchair if you sit down and really strategize about it. You want to go jet skiing, we can figure that out, but we gotta have the right friends, you gotta have the right equipment. You need to know where to be. And so the biggest thing I had to relearn was just planning very far ahead. And then, another thing I had to relearn was just how to communicate. So I've got a tracheotomy tube, right through here. And so, my diaphragm collapsed and everything. So my laugh today is unrecognizable to me. It does not sound like my laugh because, my voice changed a significant amount because I couldn't speak for a long time. And so that's another thing.
Well, let's talk. First of all, I this is going to be a silly question, but I think it speaks to like how things that people who can walk take for granted. Like, if you want ice cream for the freezer, how do you do it?
Well, I would say I'm pretty daggum good at wheelchair skills. Like, I can do a wheelie like nobody's business, and I can do all kinds of stuff. So, but I've got a freezer that's low to the ground, so I can.
Okay, that's what you do. Okay, yeah.
Yep. It's all about equipment. Like, almost any problem can be fixed, and this is where we've got a lot of issues. Almost any problem can be fixed with money.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan has this great thing. We were talking about $15 minimum wage an hour, which I think is terrible. But it's all these things. It's like, hey man, have you ever have you ever been sick and broke at the same time? He's like, that is a terrible place to be. And so, this is a big reason why I'm so passionate about changing the way our healthcare system works, because it's just so freaking expensive. And, we've got to take care of people with pre-existing conditions, because my life would be much worse if I didn't have the funds to make it easy.
Of course. Well, let's talk. Okay, you're a politician. Obviously, you're no stranger to being able to run your mouth, right? I'm sure that was before, but in all seriousness, in a way, I think it would be, given what I do for a living, I think it might be scarier for me to not be able to talk than not to be able to get out of bed. Because if you're not able to write, how did you realize you couldn't talk? What would happen when you tried to talk?
This is about how I could talk. So the whole, it would sound like, hey, Michael. It's just nothing. But so fortunately, I had taken 2 years of American Sign Language just as an elective. And, my brother and I had done it together. And so I was able to sign to my brother a decent amount, just because my left hand wasn't able to do it. My right hand was able to do just some spelling with the ABCs. That helped the most. And then my brother created some great plans. He would get a piece of paper, and on it, he would just have, every single letter, and I could just point and touch them. And then, but it started working out real well.
How are you guys close in age?
He's 4.5 years older than me, but
Okay.
man, my brother could substitute my father. I mean, I was raised with really two father figures. I mean, my brother is the most moral, kind man I've ever met. And then my dad's fantastic on top of that. So I had a lot of great male role models, which I will tell you, this is something weird I found, Michael. When I give my story or my testimony, I'm talking about it, almost every woman in the room will just, dab their eyes right quick, but men weep.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we realize how much of our self identity is wrapped up in how we are physically able to do things. And it really made me start feeling for women. I for the very first time, I was rolling down a back alley, leaving an Irish pub one time. And there were some kind of, some shady looking guys. And never before would I be like, okay, yeah, fight me, please. We'll have a great time. But now I was like, geez, if these guys get behind me, I mean, they could kill me. They could do whatever they wanted. And it made me feel for a lot of women who find themselves in that situation. So that's another reason why I'm big on the Second Amendment, because God created men and Smith and Wesson made them equal.
Well, it's not only that, it's that they could be not even going that far, but they could just be standing behind you, making fun of you and calling you out. And you're not really going to pull a gun on them there, and you're not going to fight them. They can outrun you. It's like for someone who's like kind of, like a high achiever, to have to sit there and kind of bite your tongue. I think that's just, that happened. The reason I asked it, my grandfather was once in the elevator, and he was ex-military from Russia, and these kids were like making a scene, and they knocked his hat off his head, and he just had to stand there and pick it up, because what's he gonna do? Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I heard that story, it killed me, because it's like it's like, and there are people who have you had to deal with like people being obnoxious to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, just you could be rolling by and somebody just be like, "Oh, come on, Wheels, come on," and it's just like, "Did you just call me Wheels?"
Yeah.
And then it's like, "What are you gonna say back? Hey, come on, Pear Shape." And
yeah, right. So you just got to, I mean, was it hard for your brother? Like, did you see the look on his face? Like that's he's a strong dude, seeing it, it's so many times we see our friends. It's like, I'd rather be happening to me than a loved one, like I'd rather be dealing with this than seeing it. Cause you feel powerless to help past a certain point. Was that tough, seeing that look on his face, knowing, does he have a poker face? I'm sure he doesn't, to some extent, not with this.
He's gotten a good poker face on stuff like this, but I mean, every now and then when I say you got to allow yourself to grieve, my brother would spend the night every single night for, over a year in the hospital with me. And I mean, just imagine us tapping. Oh no, sir, you can't actually you can't sleep here. He's like, oh, okay. Walks out to, the van, pulls out a twin mattress, and starts walking in. Like, oh, sir, you actually can't stay. And then he's like, okay, well, are you going to stop me? Cause it's my brother in there. But so we had a lot of really just touching moments, and just like, I would be kind of complaining about something. And then, he'd grab my hand, and be like, tears in his eyes. And just be like, there's nothing I can tell you, man. This is how it's going to be. And that was when my brother was resigned to the fact. He's like, dude, you're just going to have to get really fucking tough, because this is a hard road you have to pull.
Hey guys, we want to take a sec to talk about our new sponsor, Sovereignty. Now, with the new pandemic, everyone's been forced to create a routine. We all know the most important part of routine is making sure you're using your time wisely. And to do that, you have to be focused and energized, but also calm and relaxed. So that's easy to do with Sovereignty. If you go to SOVEREIGNTY.co and use code Malice, you get 20% off and a 30-day money-back guarantee. What is it? It's a daily energy and performance supplement called Purpose that empowers and supports your mind and body to achieve new levels of productivity. It's a combination of 25 herbs and scientifically supported synergistic supplements chosen for their support of cognition, energy, and mood. All those different bottles you see at the store, they've combined a ton to give you the focus and energy of coffee, but none of those coffee jitters and anxiety. If you go to sovereignty.co and use code Malice, you get 20% off. Let's get back to the show. What was it like campaigning, both being in a wheelchair and during COVID?
So, man, you know what? I will say COVID-19, how terrible it was, all the human suffering was awful. But the one benefit it allowed me to have is, I'm completely new to politics. I've never been involved. I follow issues all the time, but, I'm just getting married. And so, we're talking about having kids and all that stuff. And it's just like, I mean, you saw how viciously you got attacked for saying, well, Madison Cawthorn skips leg day.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I don't want my kids to grow up in a culture where people are just going to get brutalized. So I was like, I want to do something about it. So I got involved, but then there's all these seasoned politicians, or a state senator, but these big fancy consultants, which we couldn't afford. We've ran a million campaigns, and we had a major experience gap. But then COVID-19 happens. No one's ever campaigned through a pandemic of living, and so it put us all on a major level playing field. And then, being able to utilize the Newtown Square of social media just blew, that blew other people out of the water. And, because I don't know about you, Michael, but to me, taking a quick story on Instagram, posting like, oh, this is what I'm headed to do. That's just second nature. I mean, everybody you sit down with to eat a really cool looking meal, like, everybody needs to take a picture of that before it's going to happen. That's just a benefit of being in this generation. But I'll tell you, talking about the wheelchair and campaigning, it was really tough to kind of overcome people from, boomers, the baby boom generation, because being in a wheelchair then is so much different than being in a wheelchair now. I mean, my wheelchair I can probably hit 13 miles an hour in this chair. It's super light. I can do wheelies. I can do all kinds of stuff. It's very versatile. But their wheelchairs, I've literally seen pictures of wheelchairs made out of wood.
Oh, wow.
And so, what older people think I'm capable of doing, they're just saying, oh, well, hey, man, let me get your coffee for you. And you really had to overcome. This is something I think that a lot of people have to deal with in my situation, is you feel like you have to perform 6 times better than normal just to appear on par with everybody else. I've got a guy in my staff who really struggles with spelling. But I know he's probably had to deal with that his entire life. And therefore he's used to being a high achiever. And it's made him probably one of the greatest staffers I have. And so it's stuff like that. There's benefits to things, but you really have to be a high achiever to just appear on par.
So a little bit something about being isolated with your own thoughts. And that a lot of Americans have had to deal with that in the last year, and they're still dealing with that in many cases. And one of the reasons I didn't expect this, but I got a lot of feedback that thank you for your content because it's helping me stay sane, because I feel like I'm talking to someone who I know. What advice would you give to people who have become, either through an accident or through these COVID lockdowns, socially isolated? How do you keep yourself sane?
Well, that's a major problem with people who are in AA. Alcoholics, one of their major crutches is, go get in a social setting that doesn't involve alcohol, and, it will kind of take your mind off of it. You'll get a different kind of buzz just from the interaction. And so I think that the way to really talk about how to handle being alone in your own thoughts is, again, you have got to have that framework of saying, hey, I know if I start thinking, like if there's a thought, I'm going to say it out loud. But no matter what I'm doing, I could be, on a jet ski with my fiance on perfectly blue water, just flying, sun shining on us. We're laughing, having a great time. In the back of my mind, that little voice will say, but dude, imagine how much fun you could be having if you weren't in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And so that is something I do not allow myself to think. So I started thinking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to have kids, but I'm not going to be able to teach my kids how to tackle. And so you got to have that framework set up. But, biggest thing is definitely, I think, believing in a higher power is a major help there, because, I'm a strong Christian. I believe Christ is the way, and I believe in God. But because of that, we believe we always have the Holy Spirit with us. And so that's something that has helped a lot. I know that there's some similar things in both Buddhism and Islam. And so.
But just more like on a day-to-day basis, like, is it more like you're being aware of that voice and like kind of like the dog whisperer, snapping yourself out of it? Because you were very lucky. You have your faith and you have your family. A lot of people don't have that. And I myself don't know that I have a good answer for them. You would think with social media, you can make connections, but it's still only to a point. It's still a picture on the screen. And I wish I had more advice for these people.
Man, the biggest piece of advice I give, and I get made fun of it from all my friends all the time. Everyone's always like, oh yeah, Maddie hates being alone. Like, you can't leave Maddie alone. He'll always be like, hey, I'm going to brush my teeth. You want to come? And it's a freaking crutch that I have built, where I hate being alone because I hate being alone with my thoughts. And I'm in a position, where I've got taxpayer funded staff at all times. I've got lots of friends. And so I'm able to almost never be alone. It would be hard to do my job if I'm alone. But you know what? A lot of people don't have that. And so I'm on the same boat as you. I don't know exactly what to say to that. That is the battle that you got to fight. And, I'm sometimes a little bit cowardly on it, saying, oh, I don't like what I'm thinking, I'm going to, invite somebody over. But with COVID-19, how can you do that?
So you're from North Carolina. Are you guys the vinegar ones, or are you guys the mustard barbecue sauce?
We're the tomato base. Those Easterners don't know what they're talking about.
Was it hard moving to DC?
So, I actually sleep in my office. My wife and I know I keep going back and forth between wife and fiance and all that stuff, but so we have our big ceremony coming up in April because we had to push it off for just COVID and stuff like that. But we wanted to get married before I had to do all this stuff, because she can get her security clearance and everything. And so we came up here, and it's like, okay, well, we'll have our home back in North Carolina, then we'll live up here in DC. So two major problems. One, which I'm sure you can expect, to rent my office, which I've got a big office, to rent this office as an apartment, to buy it, because I just hate renting, it'd probably be $800,000. I mean, just easy. But then so first of all, it's how do you even get a loan on that? I mean, that's insane. It took 20 years to pay off. But then I also started looking around. I went to dinner with a few people, and I realized, man, you are all so caught up in the DC scene.
Yeah.
There's a totally different power setting in DC than when you're at Cracker Barrel in your district, and somebody's looking you in the eye and being like, yeah, well, I can't get my daggum small business loans. Like, oh, I can fix that for you. And normal America is much different than both the Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and DC. To answer your question, I still live in North Carolina. I'm up here probably 40% of the time.
Are you homesick when you're in DC, or just so busy?
Man, I wake up every single morning with an enemy. And that is, I think to me, it's government control. And so I wake up fired up when I'm here. I don't know how because the average age in Congress thinks in their 60s. So all these people got kids, grandkids, all this stuff. And also just getting old is it's not for cowards. And I don't know how they're able to do it, because I'm 25. I can go until 4 a.m. no problem. But I also don't have any kids. My wife, she's an anesthetist, so she might be at a hospital taking care of a craniotomy. So I'm not worried about, I'm missing out on my wife. Biggest thing I miss is really my dog. When I'm here, I'm all about it.
Hey guys, want to take a second to talk to you about Fume, F-U-M. If you go to fumessential.com and use promo code Malice10, you get 10% off your entire order. What is Fume? It's not a vape. It's not a cigarette. It's a hollow piece of Canadian maple, and they've got different cores infused with the benefits of the world's super plants. So it's a great way to get off of smoking that has not addictive, completely natural. So they've got a black pepper core one, which helps you reduce your craving for nicotine. They've got one for peppermint for better breath, lavender for relaxation. It's no smoke. You just take this little core, fan it out, stick it in, and it looks like a steampunk cigar or something. It looks really cool, but it's something that will help you know what to do with your hands, because that ritual is something that smokers are so part of the addiction. If you go to website fumessential.com and use promo code Malice, you get 10% off your entire order. You can subscribe for monthly deliveries and never have to worry about your fume supply, or check out new products a la carte. Let's get back to the show. Every politician gets attacked in the most horrific personal ways. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. Do people come at you, about your disability on social media, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, man. So there is a freaking far right nut. There's some people on the very, very fringe far right who I think are very violent, and they need to be expelled from ever being able to call themselves Republicans or whatever. But sometimes they'll just come after me and be like, oh, well, how are you even going to stand? You can't stand. You say you're going to stand up for us, but stuff like that. But most people, and I will say probably just because of all the virtue signaling the left has to do, they're pretty daggum kind about not attacking me on it, the actual politicians. But just kind of normal people, they'll attack me on it left and right. Because like you said, politicians get attacked in the most horrific ways. I would say probably Elon Omar, AOC, Dan Crenshaw, Matt Gaetz, myself, we probably take the worst of it.
Yeah.
But everybody has to deal with it. And sometimes we pat each other in the halls. It's like, oh, hey, what crime did you commit last week according to the paper? It's It's like, oh, apparently I participated in tax fraud is what one of them said one time, and he walks off. It's like another day.
Have you met Tammy Duckworth and Governor Abbott of Texas?
So Governor Abbott of Texas, I have to give a big shout out to. When I first got out of the hospital, Mark Meadows gave me a job. He's the former congressman for the seat I now hold. I was his staff assistant, worked in his district office. And, I called, I just was looking up, politicians in wheelchairs. Greg Abbott came up, picked up the phone, called him. And I knew to get in touch with his scheduler. And I kind of used my boss's credentials to get there. And then I was like, hey, so the congressman actually doesn't need to talk to Greg, Governor Abbott, but I really don't know how to, I don't know how to cut my suits. And so if you will, because when you wear a suit, after the pocket, it goes very low. So I have to get them specially made to be cut so that they don't stick in my wheels.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's that was, I talked to him before, he called me after I won. He said, didn't I help you with your suits like 6 years ago? I was like, yes, sir. And I was like, I wear some damn good suits now. So we were laughing, but I have not met Duckworth yet, but I'm glad she was here because she's really they've made things much more accessible because of that.
Yeah. Are there still issues getting around in DC? I would think with the American Disabilities Act, which Bob Dole, shepherded, that, things would actually be, especially in the federal government level, would be taken care of.
They are. The biggest problem is, I think there needs to be an amendment to the American Disability Act, which I'm going to introduce, is that historic buildings and historic sites are not accountable for this. But man, all of DC is a historic site. So there's so many restaurants do not have a ramp to get up. It's always up a step. And so that's really difficult. Fortunately, I have staff to fix it. But man, unless I have a meeting there, if they're not accessible, I will not give them my dollars just because it's absurd. But I will say that, the biggest thing, obviously there's a lot we could unpack about what happened on January 6th and riots and everything. But we had to be evacuated, once they were kind of getting to the doors, we were going. And the evacuation route is not handicap accessible, which I found out very late. And so, it's down this huge flight of stairs. So, I fortunately had some good buddies who, they went with me down some elevators. We kind of braved the crowds on our own, but it was something. So that's something they're fixing now.
Is that the kind of thing that you have to, I'm sure you have to deal with this every so often, like your friends have to carry up a flight of stairs or a flight of downstairs. Is it awkward or are you over it at this point? Or just anyone having to deal with this? How should I handle it if my friend is in that situation?
It all depends on how close you are to them. Okay. I encourage people in my situation, give extraordinarily clear instructions. Okay. And it's kind of awkward to give instructions to your friends. Fortunately, a lot of my friends work for me, so we kind of have that command structure already set up. But there is a known rule. Never, once I get into the car, because normally I ride in a big SUV. I drive a Dodge Challenger, so then I'll pull my wheelchair apart, put the back seat. But normally I can't. When I'm riding my SUV, I'll hop up, get in, and then somebody will take my wheelchair and put it in the back. But I have a rule that no one's allowed to close my door because sometimes I might be reaching down, and if you were to hit my hands and break them, I would be out of commission for a year.
That can you describe what it's like to someone who's not a paraplegic? What it feels like? Do you have sensation in your legs? What is that? Is that like when your legs fall asleep? Help me understand what it's like for you. Yeah.
So I'm gonna grab a pin here. So think of this as my spine.
Okay.
I got hurt just below the center, which is the T12 vertebrae.
Okay.
And where that happens, that's when the spinal cord, it's a tight little fiber optic looking cord. But that is where it starts to turn into a horsetail. So from here, they all spread out to go to all the different parts of your legs. Problem with me being hurt there is that if I was hurt one level higher, things will all go in a line. So I can't feel from my nipples down. And then as nerves start to heal, it would all go inch by inch. But for me, it's completely random. So, I can feel temperature with my right foot. I've got a 3rd-degree burn on my left foot right now because I can't feel temperature there. And I burned it on Christmas Day. So that was wow. But then on my inner right thigh, I can feel there, on one of my hip flexors, I can flex. I got my right quad, which I can motion. And I do that every night, Michael. So I do leg day.
It's not leg day if you're doing it every night.
Yeah, but yeah, so my sensation is very sporadic. I will tell you the worst thing about my accident is there's a thing called neuropathy. The easiest way for me to explain this is that it is like it's basically phantom pains.
Oh yeah.
And so midway through my back, when my car was on fire, when my spinal cord was swelling.
Oh wow.
And so all of the signals coming from my legs were, holy shit, I'm on fire, I'm on fire, I'm on fire, I'm on fire. And then all of a sudden all the information stopped because it destroyed the spinal cord. Just the swelling of the accident. But then once my swelling went down, everything was getting better. I would wake up in the middle of the night and, I'd call my nurse and I would sign for fire, because I felt like my legs were on fire. So what happened is when my spinal cord is constantly trying to reconnect with my brain, your body's amazing like that. So many things have healed on me just over time. But sometimes when it sends that signal trying to get back to my brain and it gets through kind of the big traffic jam, it's almost a scar on that area that says, hey, I'm on fire. And so I deal with this thing called nerve pain where my legs just explode. And I mean, it is awful. It probably happens about 30 times a day. I've got some medical tech that helps, but it's awful.
How do kids deal with you? Because kids are curious. Kids also say whatever's on their mind. You're eye level with them. They may not have seen someone in a wheelchair. So you're obviously a friendly dude. So like that must be fun for you because they're coming from a good place usually.
All the time. I mean, and so many, specifically young boys. I've tried to get my nieces involved, but they're all girls for them. But young boys especially love the wheels and the mechanisms. And, I got these scissor brakes on my wheel. I'll show them how those work. And so I can entertain a group of 10 kids for 40 minutes, just walking through my wheelchair, letting them push me around. But so often, I'll be rolling past a booth and like at O'Charlie's, rolling down, and then all of a sudden, you'll hear some kid be like, Mom, why is he in a wheelchair? Mom, why is he sitting down? And a lot of kids think it's cool. Because, obviously I'll try to show off so they don't like the stigma they have for people in wheelchairs is not, you're incapable of doing it. So I'll do a wheelie, I'll jump up, I'll do all kinds of stuff. I'll pick them up and hold them upside down. And they have a lot of fun with that. But it's kids are very honest about it. It's just saying, hey, why the heck are you sitting down?
What made you decide at such a young age that you had what it takes to make it to Congress? I'm sure it's a question you had to deal with all the time.
So, there you can have a lot of letters after your name. I think Elon Musk has a great quote. You can go to college and still be an idiot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then he's talking about if you want to do something that requires extreme levels of competence, you just need to know that you can demonstrate extreme levels of competence. And so I knew going into the campaign, like, wow, I'm 24 years old, technically not even constitutionally eligible to be a congressman that day. And so fortunately my birthday came right before the election. And as we're going forward with it, I'm talking to my wife who, she was like, I don't know how you can win. There's 12 people involved in this primary. It's going to be like a knife fight in a phone booth. And, but I was just so sure that I knew the people in Western North Carolina and I saw the problems going on in Washington, D.C. and how inept people are. And I was like, I know what to say. These people want someone who's just going to say it like it is and get the job done. And so started going through my campaign. Everybody just wrote me off. It's like, oh, hey, love everything you're doing, but you're just too young. You need to wait in line, but you've got the right values. You've got the right vigor. Great. Just wait for a while. There's other people ahead of it. And then the first debate came, 12-way debate. And I knew this was, I was either going to make it or break it here. So it blew it out of the water. But at some point I literally said, people oftentimes will say, hey, you have to wait my turn, wait in line. And I will physically look around the room and say, who the hell are we in line behind?
Yeah.
And obviously that's totally something contrary to what a normal politician would say. Because normally politicians would say, oh, I really appreciate the work that this state congressman has done and this particular individual as judge. But I was just like, who the hell are we in line behind? So whoever's ahead of us, at that point, we were $20 trillion in debt. Both Republicans and Democrats throwing us in debt. My kids are going to have to bear the brunt of that in taxes. And then, our country's on fire. Yeah. And so it was why I got involved is because I think if our generation waits until we're 50 years old to get involved, I do not think we'll have a country to inherit.
Where are all where do you have to spend extra money? Like suits is one thing you mentioned, right? Do you only have like one pair of shoes or a couple of pairs of shoes because you're not wearing them down? Like what are the expenses that I'm not aware of and where are you saving money, if anywhere?
Man, I've got the greatest Nike collection from years and years, and they are still so shiny because they never get dirty. It's great. but so I've probably got 3 or 4 pairs of dress shoes that, I rarely have to scrub them up because they're always fine. I got to spend a lot of extra money on suits. There's ways you can do it cost efficient. And if anybody has a question about that and you're in a wheelchair and it's like, hey, I'm just going to go to a Men's Warehouse and get a cheap suit, I can teach you how to tell a seamstress to cut it. She'll do it for like $30. But I get my suit specially made and everything. But things you have to spend money on, putting hand controls inside of a car, very expensive. You got to ship parts off to get the communication relays all set up. And mine set up like a fighter jet, my Challenger. So I pull back and that accelerates, push forward, that stops. Where the missile button would be is my horn. It's great. But that's a major extra expense. And then if I'm ever going to live somewhere new, go into a new home or I'm moving, there's just a lot. I got to remodel every single bathroom. I got to go in and figure out a way to lower down the countertops, the granite countertops in place. I'm a big cook, so I got to make sure that I have enough storage to put all my pots and pans on the lower cabinets and not be able to access the higher ones. And so that's extra money. My dog was a little more expensive than most dogs because he's a fully trained attack dog, but also can pull me up hills. And he's my best friend.
What kind of dog?
He's a German Shepherd. Yeah.
Oh, they're the best. They're so smart.
Yeah, he's from Germany, trained in Saudi Arabia. He's bad to the bone. My best friend.
What's his name?
His name is Beowulf.
Awesome. Madison, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Man, you know what? And I'm probably getting in trouble with people back home for saying this, but just getting to talk shit with somebody on the other side. I mean, really, you know what? Just so often you see in the news, oh, well, this person said that, they don't like this decision. And then all of a sudden, both sides, they recede into one another. And then it's an echo chamber. And then you become an extremist. And, extremism feels good because you can blame every single issue you're dealing with on that group or on that party, on that ethnicity. But you have to take no personal responsibility yourself. Man, that's crap. It's up to you to change the way you do. I mean, you hear this quote all the time, but life is 80% what happens to you, or 20% what happens to you, and 80% how you respond to it. And I could have decided, Michael, when you said, Madison Cawthorn skips leg day to appeal to, on MSNBC. Well, I just feel like he's very ableist and you can go on, make up an ism or something. But you know what? That's what's wrong with the country. Don't cancel your neighbor. Just go communicate with them. And you'll find out that we agree on 80% of the issues, but mainstream media and Washington, there is an establishment out there. I think we're starting to heal that in the Republican Party, but there is the establishment out there. They profit off of division. And so does the mainstream media. And so, I like the fact that you and I can set an example of saying, man, we can disagree politically. You can even punch me in the gut with a funny line, and with a quick jab, but we're still friends. I'm
going to say 2 things. One, you are welcome.